How's it going, everyone? Welcome back. Hopefully everyone is having a lovely day. So there's no way to sugarcoat things. The Reds have allowed 36 runs in the last two games against the Chicago Cubs. The Reds have been obliterated by the Chicago Cubs, to say the very least. Now, here's the thing. Personally, am I panicking? No. I don't think there's any panic here. Now, when you give up 36 runs, it's a team effort. But for the reason of not panicking, we have to remember, now this is a Cincinnati Reds pitching rotation that is, all things considered, on schedule. We say that because this is a Cincinnati Reds offense that is way ahead of schedule. This is a Cincinnati Reds team that was supposed to lose 100 plus games this season. This Cincinnati Reds team that sold the house the last couple seasons, and the management, the organization was under a whole lot of fire. And you have to give them credit. You have to give them credit where credit is due and say, hey, there was a lot of naysayers, there was a lot of doubt, and understandably so. Nobody wants to see their best players walk out the door. But they did what they thought was best for rebuilding, retooling, and building the best bright future they possibly can. And now we look at the offense that is put together by this Cincinnati Reds organization, and boy, has it been impressive. And this offense has single-handedly been putting this team on its back and putting them in a position to contend for a playoff spot. Currently in a playoff spot. That being said, we didn't expect that this season. And we bring that back to the pitching staff, saying there's still these young guys on the pitching staff. They're still figuring out some holes. You got two guys that are down, Lodolo, Green. Your number one and number two pitchers have been down for a big part of the season. And a team that was expected to lose 100 games. And they're in first place in their division. Think about that. There was going into the season, you were supposed to lose 100 games. The two bright spots of your team, Lodolo and Hunter Green, down and out. Now, say what you want. You can't discredit Alexi Day. He's been nasty. You got some guys in that bullpen with some promise. But, you're playing to build around Stevenson in India. And you consider what this team has done against all odds. It's been impressive. You gotta tip your cap to this team. You gotta appreciate what they're doing right now. But here's the thing. Williamson, Abbott's been impressive. But still, Williamson, Abbott, these young guys, you expected them to come up. You expected them to have growing pain. It's gonna happen. It happens with just about every pitcher that comes up. They're gonna have their bad night. They're gonna have nights to give up 8 runs. They might have a couple of them in a month. It takes time for them to kind of work through things, work through the control, work through these. Just like everybody else, there's an adjustment phase, and those nights happen. We just seen it with Williamson. Really, we didn't, I guess. But it wasn't the best of nights. But we see it with players, and in general. Williamson did have his best. I gotta be careful how we put that. How we worded that there. I was comparing Williamson, thinking about Williamson versus Lively, but 13 runs is a lot. But you have to consider those kind of nights are going to happen. Now, the thing is, when nights of 16 runs happen and nights of 20 runs happen, it is not just the pitching staff's fault. There's a couple things that glared out to me in these Cubs games versus these Cubs Reds games, and one of them, tried and true, was how many times the Cubs hit a fly ball to the outfield, and the Cincinnati Reds defense did not have the awareness of where the fence was. They did not have the awareness of, where to properly time and jump the catch the baseball. But the point was, they was camped under the baseball. They had a chance to make the play, but the defense has not been making plays. The defense has 6 errors in the last 2 games. And that is huge. It is huge. And the question is, for multiple reasons. Let's go down the avenue. 6 errors is 6 errors. Okay. It's not all the defense's fault, but let's play the Cubs offense. Let's play the Cubs offense. You lose game 1. You just made some trades at the deadline. You lose game 1. The last thing you want to do is, lose 3 or 4 at home to the Reds when you're in a playoff spot. You lose the first game. You can be down and out. And, you go into the next game, not saying it's what happened, but, it can go through a team's head. Maybe you're struggling to get hits. You're struggling to get on base. A team makes an error. All of a sudden, you say, okay, we got a chance. You got to run first base. We got a chance. You get the momentum going. You feel a little bit more confident. Meanwhile, maybe your pitcher's been struggling lately. It's the first inning. Your first batter gets out, second one's in air. All of a sudden, there's a guy on first. There's a guy on second, and what could have been possibly a routine inning. Now the nerves are going. Now he's a little bit worried. Now, oh no, is this going to be another one of those outings? Am I going to struggle again? All it takes is one hit now. What would have been one meaningless runner takes one hit, runners in scoring position, guy scores, and all of a sudden, the confidence goes down. And it's such a big deal. I think that's something that really goes untalked about, is the defense and how it affects a team. Because it's not only the defense in that regard, but let's think about Brandon Phillips. You remember how much of a stud Brandon Phillips was defensively. And You consider, again, flip the script, runner on first base, maybe first and second. Your pitcher's nervous. He's worried. He's been having a bad couple outings. Line drive between a first and second baseman. Brandon Phillips makes some sort of remarkably ridiculous play on the ball. Maybe it's a little play. Maybe it's an out. All of a sudden, big play by my defense. My defense has got me. The nerves start to settle down. Suddenly goes one out. Now there's two. Suddenly there's no out. There's one. And you see a way out of the inning. But it feels like, from a Reds defensive standpoint right now, you don't really have... You're making mistakes, but you're not having those plays that are like, all right, let's get my pitcher back in. It doesn't feel like the defense has the team's back all the way, or the pitcher's back, we should say. And that's understandable to an extent, because, you got a lot of these guys playing opposition. You got David Bell rotating a lot of those guys. It's going to happen. And a lot of these guys are, like I said, they're young guys. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to grow. They're going to improve. But it's a glaring issue for the Reds right now. It's something to be noted of. And unfortunately, you can't have an average pitching staff or a slightly below average pitching staff and bad defense and expect to make a run in the playoffs. You can sure as heck go out there and score 10 runs a game like the Reds have and win baseball games and make a playoffs. But when things clamp down in the playoffs, the runs start coming harder to come by. Those errors become magnified. And I think that's the thing with the Reds here when they start losing games, is when you're winning games and the offense is great, everything's rolling, you don't notice some of the issues, but when you start losing, you get these blowouts, you start looking at the problems that were overlooked before. So I don't necessarily look at the organization and say, wow, they should have made a move. I see a lot of that. Oh, they should have made a move at the trade deadline for a pitcher. Like, I wouldn't say they left their team out to dry. Was that pitcher going to make that routine catch in the outfield? Was that, was that pitcher, was we supposed to expect guys to go down with injury? No, I think if the Reds, they didn't want to overpay, they don't overreach, and they say, we got some guys coming back. We got the pitching staff's been solid lately. Again, Ashcraft, Abbott, that's 2. You bring back Lodola Green, that's 4. You just need one of these other guys to be solid, and you're all right. So you're feeling good about things if you're the organization. I understand that perspective. But we also have to be aware, like, these kind of nights are going to happen. My concern here is the one thing that we can control is what's David Bell doing with this? I think you have to give David Bell some credit here. Since he's been manager of this Cincinnati Reds, he has found a way to motivate this team. He has found a way to make this offense freaking good. Multiple years now. You do it once, all right, do it twice. I mean, this is the second time now in his tenure we've seen this Reds team, a resilient bunch, a confident bunch at the plate. Never feels like they're out of a game. And you have to, again, turn it back to the manager. He did that with 2 completely different teams. Found a way to motivate them, found a way to boost them up. The other thing with David Bell is his data and analytics game that sometimes can overshadow what's happening on the field. And I think, we bring up Nick Senzel's 3 errors last night. We bring up sometimes when we see some of these outfield plays that are kind of, or some of these infield plays are kind of, and it's like they glare when it turns out to be the Reds aren't putting the best fielders on the field because, there's a lefty on the mound. We got to play the analytics. We have to play the game of who's a better against the lefties. Got to put those righties out there. And this is where things get tricky because there is a time and a place for that. But we just talked about everything that has to do with fielding and the impact it has on this baseball game. So what is more important if you're the Reds? A contact hitter that might have a 10 or 15 points higher batting average against the lefties, but he's weaker in the field? Or do you want the guy that's a little weaker against the lefties, but he's the superior fielder? Because at the end of the day, you have 7 other guys on his team to put runs on the board, but you put a guy in the outfield and he doesn't err, you can bust that game wide open real quickly. And I think it affects everything. And I think overall, the one thing we're not seeing out of David Bell, I'd like to see more of, is I want to see the best 9 overall players. I get it. I get the analytics. I understand it. I understand why you want to put the guys you feel like you have the best chance to hit. But this is a team that is not struggling to hit the baseball. I don't think there's been a time this season where a lefty, and this is the thing about the beauty of this Reds team this season. I don't think there's been a time this season where say, there's a lefty on the mound, game over. There was times in the past, lefty on the mound, forget about it. The Reds didn't have a chance. It don't feel like that. It don't ever feel like you need to play the data and analytics game for this team to score runs. It feels like you need to play the data analytics game to slow the other team down, though. And I think that's where you get the most complete players, you get the most overall players, and you try to get the most consistency. You want to get these, again, they're young guys. It's great that they can be utility guys moved around, but you want to get them the most not at bats, but appearances in the same position all season, so you can see them continuously grow and improve at said position. They can't, it's a little bit more difficult when you're playing third, you're playing second, you're playing short, you're playing right field. at least if they get the consistent reps, you'll see a little bit of improvement. And I think that's the one thing, you know, you want to see that you feel like they can control and they can work on a little bit here is the defensive side of the defensive side of things. But again, it is difficult. I don't think we look at a game and say, you know, it's easy to sit on a couch and when you're not managing the baseball game as an actual manager. It's easy to sit back and look at things when a player has a bad game, has an error, whatever. It's like, oh, so obviously you shouldn't have played him there. But it is difficult, and you have to remember, you know, David Bell he's trying to do his best to win games in his opinion or his mind. But, you know, there is also only so many options. You know, guys get injured. Not, you know, it ain't like the Reds are working with this star-studded defensive unit that they just fail to play every single night. But, you know, there is the area where you can say, well, some of these guys are above average and some of these guys are a little bit below average. That's okay. That's not a big deal. But again, as the manager, it comes back to you to at least do your best. And again, it might not look like it. Maybe he is. It's easy to look at it in hindsight. The best you can do is do your best to put the best 9 overall players on the field every given night. And that's going to become more and more important late into the season because you want to make a playoff run. You'd like to see these guys get some consistent ABs. You don't want to see a couple of guys getting a day off, a guy getting a day off every 2 days. You want to see your young guys especially try to get as many reps as possible. It is good to get the rest, but obviously when you're, you know, at the point the Reds are out, we're like, we got 10 starters. Come and play 9. I'll bring back Newman, you know, 11. At least that's how David Bell views him. It is what it is. It's fine. You know, Newman's been, how's he been since he's been back? But, you know, he was solid. You know, Newman gets a lot of flack. I think it's just because he's not a young guy in his team, but he's been solid and produced for this team. But nonetheless, we'll see. I think that's my concern with this Reds team right now. Love you guys' thoughts. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next time.